Next, we're on episode 19, and this one is all about T5s. Episode 19 of the 52 Weeks of Reefing was called Compelling Data for Using T5 Lighting on Your Reef Tank. This is actually kind of that start of some Investigate series tests that we did. Got some data on the T5 lights and talked about it in the 52 weeks. But here's the core belief where we stand today on T5 lighting.
That was 2015.
Yeah.
Right, back then. Today, I will say that our core belief on T5 lighting is this. T5 is the ideal biology, and replacing the sky effect of that horizon light.
Replicating.
But it's not the future.
Yeah.
So T5 is the ideal biology and replicating the sky effect, but not the future.
Not the future.
T5s are blanketing the whole tank in light from every direction. It is the sky effect of horizon to horizon, 360 through the whole tank.
Blended even spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's coming from all angles, especially when you think about that it's not illuminating the tank per se, but it is illuminating the aquascape inside. Then the lighting object is bigger than what you're trying to illuminate, which means it literally is coming from every direction.
360.
Bouncing off the glass, back in. It's coming from everywhere because it's such a wide angle form of light. So T5 is the ideal biology, replicating the sky effect, but the hang up here is it's not the future, and we'll share a few reasons as to why.
Sorry, but it is the truth.
I know that's a hard thing to hear, man, because you got this like technology. I mean, still sitting on this one right here behind us.
And there's a lot of discussion in the hobby of like, a bunch of the pros and people are going back to these old technologies like T5s and metal halides. And we're going to talk about that. So what matters most when it comes to T5 lighting and using it on your reef tank as it relates to the core belief. First one is lighting. Like you said, lighting is larger than the object it's trying to illuminate. So when you look at any tank, you look at this tank behind us, you look at your tank at home, you're not trying to light or grow the glass. You're not trying to light the edges of the tank. You've made an aquascape inside of the glass box. It doesn't touch wall to wall and edge to edge, so it means you're going to get some space between the glass and your actual aquascape. So when you talk about lighting and being larger than the object you're trying to illuminate, my aquascape is only this big, but the T5 light is 24 by almost 24. If you're talking like a 60-gallon cube in an 8-bulb 24-inch fixture. That thing is definitely bigger than the single coral or the multiple corals I'm trying to illuminate on the aquascape.
So the goal here is to wrap the object in light. So if I stuck up my hand here and I only had one direction of light, I'm going to see a shadow behind it on the floor anywhere. The only way you're not going to see a shadow is if the light object is significantly bigger than my hand, meaning the light is coming and hitting all sides of my hand and the ground behind it evenly. That's the only way. And so if you think of a coral reef in the ocean, the sky is absolutely bigger than the reef. And it's coming from every angle all over the place. Yeah. And in a reef, with the T5s, not only is the light object, a grid of T5s, bigger than the aquascape in most cases, but again, because they're super duper wide angle coming out of that bulb as well as the reflector, it's hitting the glass and being reflected back in. We saw that in the BRS Investigates. Very, very little light in a water-filled box actually goes through the glass. Almost all of it refracts and then reflects back into the tank and back at the aquascape, and sometimes even hitting the sand and then back up again, right? So that is the biggest thing here, is that what matters most about T5s is that lighting object is larger than the thing that it's trying to illuminate. All right, another thing that matters about T5s is there's no spectrum hotspots.
No, this is one where you can't. So we do the spectrum blending test in all of our light testing that we do, where you hang the light above the tank, you put some ripples on the water, because that's usually typically what breaks up spectrum. And when you have a T5 up there, ripples on the water, and underneath the tank, you're taking spectrum shots every few seconds in LEDs and in the lighting options that do not blend the best. You'll see spikes and jumps in the spectrum. You'll see it all over the place.
I don't even need the tool. I can look inside the tank and see red and green and shades of blue and white shooting all over the place.
However, T5 had it right early on, and we're not even thinking. I guess it was just lucky happenstance. Just the nature of the blended gases in the bulb, and the bulb being, like it's a frosted bulb. The reflectors, it all comes back down. There is no individual spectrums here. You can change out the bulb combos, and still, by the time that it hits the water, even before it hits the water, the spectrum's completely blended. So when you do that dynamic spectrum test down below the tank, flat. Those spectrum peaks do not change.
The nature of the bulb is it's illuminating a blended spectrum of all these things. Nature of the LEDs is they're all little individual peaks that we're just trying to essentially, without the diffuser, you're essentially taking these little cones and hoping that they're just going to overlap enough that they create some new color.
By the time it hits the tank.
Yeah, but the problem is that the ripples on the surface of the water don't allow those cones to actually do that. They capture that light. It's those magnified caustic lines, but now it's a magnified caustic line laser beam of red, green, whatever color it might be. And it depends on where even the strength of that beam is probably really, really high at the top of the tank, less so at the bottom of the tank. So you can debate this one all over the place. Does it matter whether or not the spectrum is blended? I'm going to skip that debate, because if I gave everybody an option where they were perfectly blended, or one where I'm visually seeing red, green, and blue shoot all over the place, and the meter is telling me that it is not blended, 100 out of 100 reefers will pick the option that is blended. If cost is taken out of the equation, all the rest of it's, if we're asking about which one is best, 100 out of 100 reefers will tell you the blended spectrum that came from T5s or halide bulbs, or even out of well-designed LEDs with the diffusers, are a superior way than just allowing these caustic lines of laser beam
620 nanometers straight.
Boom, hit it super hard, because we don't even know the effects of that at all. And
well, and that brings us back to the point of the one we just talked about, is if the ultimate goal is to emulate the nature and the sky and the sun, there are zero, individual wavelengths of color in the ocean. There is no beam of red. There is no beam of green. There is no beam of straight UV or infrared.
Actually, I had a friend of mine that actually put the Phillips coral cares over the tank, right? And then they had some problems with the SPS at the very top, and reached out to Coral Care, and they said, oh, you have mounted it too close, and the spectrum's probably not blended well enough at that point. Even the diffused option, the manufacturer, and sure enough, he raised it up, and it's the same par level, still matches the same par, but now the spectrum, and now he's not having those problems at the top of the tank. So, thinking about one of the reasons why T5s work so well is
no
definitely that. Okay, this is actually one of the big deals too with T5s was the setting recommendations are just how many bulbs to the application.
Yeah, I did a bunch of investigating tests on 4 bulb, 6 bulb, 8 bulb, and some different bulb collar combinations. And that softy LPS tank, that 50 to, or that 75 to a 150 range of par that you're trying to shoot for, all I needed was a 4 bulb T5. Mixed tank with some SPS at the top with a little bit of higher par at the top and still that same lower par in the middle. All I needed was a 6 bulb T5. And for some reason, like this hit, even though I wasn't, I'm a big T5 fan, and I have been for a long time. I've had 4s, 6s, and 8s. And so 8 bulb was what you would consider when you wanted an SPS dominated system. And I don't even remember the conversation being like, it was just a conversation that was known. If you're not going to get SPS or what you need for SPS if you get a 4 bulb.
So for me, like when I entered, there was only 2 options. Like there was buy the tech fixture
Yeah.
or buy the ATI fixture. I mean, there was a bunch of garbage out there too, but it was here's a cheap option with the tech fixture. There's no fan and whatever. This is how many bulbs you should use if you want LPS. This is how many bulbs you should use. SPS, here's a couple of combinations of those things. And so it was like really a debate between two fixtures and a couple bulb combinations. Like, you could settle on what was best really easy, or a whole group of things that were working.
There's not a whole lot of camp to argue about one of the 6 bulbs, which combo is better than another combo, and then their spectrums are so close together. The blue plus versus the aqua blue special versus some of these other, or the true actinics. Their spectrum ranges aren't a whole hell of a lot different.
It was just add in a little bit of
subtle
something.
difference, or like add in like the 420 nanometer peak, so you get some vibrant fluorescence. But
basically, like the blue plus and the aqua blue special, the only difference is
a little bit more white.
They pulled out the green and yellow, and which just made more blue. And so that is one of the things. Is like nobody was failing with T5s because it's like everybody knew exactly how to advise each other.
Yeah.
We all had settled on the right thing, and go do that, plug it in the wall, put it on an 8-hour timer, and call it a day.
Well, and it was easy for you to go find somebody who, say find a mentor who's doing what you want in the tank that you want, and just say, hey, what's your bulb combo? And I used to, that was one thing I loved to do, is in my description of my forums or watching other people's descriptions in their forums, their signature line had the A+, comma B+, comma C+, comma AB+, and you knew that that was their T5 bulb spectrum, their T5 bulb choice. And so I just go buy that.
Super easy, man.
Easy.
Yeah. Emulate people's success is a couple bulb choices and a plug it in the wall. What also matters most is T5s are the cheapest way to do this exceptionally well.
Still today.
Yeah, horizon to horizon, 360, blanketed in light. I cannot think of a way of doing that, achieving that same goal, bouncing off the glass, coming back in because it's so wide angle, doing that as well for cheaper than a T5 bulb.
I think it would be extremely hard for us to find somebody whose tank failed because T5 due to the T5 lights. It would be something completely different. You could never. I could
grossly misused.
I don't know how you could do that either.
Yeah. Okay, so what also matters most, we already managed here, or mentioned many times, is T5's lever the glass. This is actually kind of a little bit of a pet peeve of mine in the past. Is, when we used to test, or like when everybody used to test lights in open air, it would look like things with focused reflectors, like halides with little focused reflectors that kept it in the grid.
Deep punch.
Yeah, or LEDs with super narrow lenses were like the most efficient and had punch. They could get it to the bottom and would have the most light. That's because in that environment, the wide angle T5s are like spilling out all over the ground, and you're just not measuring most of the light. However, when you put it in a glass box and it all refracts and then reflects back into the tank, all the light stays inside the tank, or most anyway.
It's probably what fueled that conversation that only metal halides could grow SPS and T5s couldn't. And
it's crazy talk.
And then finally, like, well, look, I'm doing it. What do you mean?
I know way more people that had success with T5s than halides. And it's not that halides aren't successful, because obviously they are. But like, if you're talking about super easy plug and play, and part of it is because there's actually a lot more options for halides. There's a lot more bulbs actually, are different kinds,
different kelvins,
different kelvins, and there's a lot more reflectors, and the reflectors were easier to screw up if you didn't know what they were doing or the right mounting height, because you could burn things pretty easy with that. But hard lessons number one with compelling data for T5s. On your Reef tank. We just said a lot of reasons why they're awesome, but some hard lessons.
These are some hard lessons. They're going to be hard for a lot of people to swallow, but we believe it's true. If you were reading the tea leaves. First hard lesson about T5s is the bulbs specific to our purpose in our industry, in our hobby. The bulbs are limited runs, and there's a limited timeline that they're going to continue making these bulbs. It's the future is short.
The future of T5 bulb production is on life support. at
It's
this
not
point.
if, it's when.
A lot of the manufacturers don't even produce the bulbs. They do like limited runs. They'll turn the factory back on for a minute.
I mean, it
to produce
hurts.
a run of
Yeah,
these
it
things.
hurts my heart to hear it, but you have to embrace like if you just look around the world in industries outside of and outside of ours, those technologies are being phased out for newer like LED type technologies. Office lighting is one of the biggest ones. You think like the amount of money that's made from office type lights and T5 fluorescent bulbs versus the amount of money in the industry for the hobby and the special spectrum wavelengths we desire, we're going to be one of the first bulbs to stop being produced.
I mean, just look at you. You could go to Home Depot a long time ago and see T5 everything, fluorescent bulb,
You
everything.
get cases of them.
Yeah, now, dude, it's all LED, right? So all the uses, and like if you think of where T5 lamps are predominantly used,
Yeah.
it is mostly in warehouse and office building type environments, right? Those things are all switching over. In Europe, they're forcing them, and actually where most of the aquarium bulbs are actually the European fluorescent tube manufacturers. They're allowing them for certain instances to continue creating them, but eventually that factory isn't going to be profitable to run anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so if I had to wager a guess on it, there's not more than a few more years of bulb production. So if you are into T5s, heart and
now.
souls, this is your way to do it.
Stock up.
Go stock up on bulbs because you probably want 10 years worth because it's not, they're going to go away.
You think about like as a hobbyist, I'd be like, well, why can't KZ just continue making these bulbs for the industry? Why can't they? No, they don't make this because their names on them, these bulbs are not made by those people, and in probably almost all instances, they're made by a factory that makes those bulbs, but they're special runs.
Yeah, there's a handful of companies that make T5 bulbs in the world, and they've reached out to the best ones and said, hey, make this specific formulation. But if they stop making T5 bulbs for other applications, it's done. And I actually would have been surprised that it hasn't already ended already.
Oh, yeah.
Like halides are almost gone.
We're going to get to those next.
Yeah, but like, so I don't know. I'd be curious to say, like, if you guys share, do you think that 5 years from now, somebody will still be manufacturing, and not an aquarium company, because aquarium companies don't manufacture bulbs, that some giant facility
like a
produces
Philips, like a
global like production of T5 bulbs is still making these things in 5 years? I
don't see it.
I'd be shocked.
Come back. Come back and share this video with us.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. All right, but it is a limited time and limited runs. So
another hard lesson here. This one isn't like super hard, but it is something to think about.
it is, especially we're doing it right here on the 160.
You have 110 volt power hanging on something that weighs about 80 pounds above the tank, hanging from the ceiling.
We talked about this in our safety and electrical episode a couple days ago.
If your hands are in there and that thing fell in, you're gone. Right? So that's one of the benefits of today's technologies is like they're like DC options of driving the LEDs, and they don't have 110 hanging over the power unless they're really, really, really cheap options.
Right.
Some of those do, but like most LEDs don't do that anymore. So, and I say that as somebody who, not with T5s, but with compact fluorescent bulbs, I had my hands in a frag tank and bumped that thing. The little plastic core life legs fell off and went in there. And if I didn't have that dry lock floor, I wouldn't be here talking to you about it. So, back in the world where there was no other option than 110 over the tank, I understand. But like if you talk about safety with anybody, putting 110 volt power hanging suspended with cheap legs or drywall being the thing that's preventing you from getting fried, or anybody in your family,
It's scary.
You could debate whether that's a terrible option, but it's not the best option by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, when you really sit down and look at it and think about it, you're like, man, that is kind of scary.
All right, so there is also a piece of biology which we've been talking a lot about, but also I want to see the thing with my eyes and love it.
This one hurts me.
Okay.
Hard lesson for T5s, and I'll embrace this now, even though I fought it for so long. The flat T5 look is a 5 out of 10, and I agree because I've had just the flat T5 look. And I've since then, added LEDs. I was supplementing with LEDs on my 90 cube, and ever since I had some LED strips. But I can agree with you that flat, everything is floating. These fish aren't swimming in the water. There's no shimmer lines. There's no nothing. It's just flat. It's like a painting on the wall with no motion.
Yeah, if you just only got T5s and that's the only thing you're running, again, it looks like that painting of a picture, not of a piece of reef that came out. Also, what it looks like is that teal color. There's no way of getting around this teal color that pops out of all of the popular bulbs, the
specifically Blue Plus
and the ATI Blue Special.
Specials.
All of them have this weird, I shouldn't say weird, they just have this teal color in there that visually to me just isn't ideal. I don't have the shimmer. And so if I'm talking about perfection, meaning, 0 is just total garbage and 10 is the best the tank could ever look, if you peel out all of the shimmer, the rhythm, and the sense of movement out of the tank, and you kind of add this kind of turquoise color to it, I mean, you could debate whether it's a 5 or a 6 or a 6.5, but getting past 6.5 when 10 is perfection, I just don't think you can say it. So, and the reality is you bought this thing and you built it to look at. The way that you absorb it is visual, right?
Well, it goes back to the last episode we just covered when we said that it's the sun, it's the sky, and it's those caustic lines, those shimmer lines, and everything in the ocean that plays a part, in the health and the vitality, the growth, the corals. T5s, obviously grew corals, so you didn't need the shimmer lines, like we said in the last episode. You don't need them. But if you're taking a slice of the ocean has that in there. Now I can't live without it.
Nope. This also hits on this one, that teal color, is it looks terrible on camera. Like nobody's phone can take a shot of a T5 only tank without it looking super washed out and terrible. And 15 years ago that wasn't an issue, man, because we all had flip phones.
No Instagrams and Snapchats.
Yeah, we weren't sharing our pictures that way. I had to use Photo Bucket to be able to share a photo on Reef Central, right?
That's true. I remember that.
Yeah, so it's not the same thing today. Now you want to share the stuff instantaneously, and I can tell you right now, like we told you that this is a T5 LED hybrid that's happening behind us.
Those are Blue Pluses and Kessels.
The T5s are off. In every video you see of us here, we have to turn the T5s off, otherwise it looks terrible on camera.
Yeah.
You would just look at it, and it would all look all washed out and teal and terrible. So in a world where people like to share, that kind of tealy peak or whatever the T5 bulb is doing does not come out on camera.
We also said in the last one that features don't grow coral. But there's a nice feature of LEDs where I can, have a setting on them that goes photo mode, and then go take a picture and then set it back. If I wanted to do that with T5s, I'd have to unscrew a couple bulbs and get to my whiter ones. But we didn't hit this one here.
Yeah, I got a couple more.
Right.
I just thought that we were talking about that teal color. So the teal color, though, also they're like the options of the T5s now, like. Once you've unlocked this spectrum box and I have the ability to tune it, both into a spectrum that's good for the coral, but also visually for my eye, well, the only options that you had before with T5s were really I could, add a little bit more purple, I could add a little bit more red, it was, and artificially too. I didn't add a lot of violet in many cases. I added that purple plus bulb, which was just more red because red and blue make purple. It was really limited, and you were also not totally even because I got one purple plus over here, and these are blue pluses, so the tank isn't really actually 100% even. I don't know. That's one of the problems with those bulbs is you also had to buy twice as many bulbs as you needed and swap them all out until you finally get to the color you wanted.
Well, it may have been a curse and a blessing in that I didn't have the keys to all of the spectrum like an LED does, so I can't turn my tank 100% red or 100% green or 100% violet because their bulbs didn't exist to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is another piece. How do you get rid of fluorescent tubes?
I've always thrown them away, but I know now that that is completely wrong.
They're filled with mercury. So you are not allowed to put those things in your trash can.
Yeah.
You might do it anyway, but for anybody that chooses to not put mercury into a landfill or pollute the groundwater or whatever, you have to bring those stupid bulbs to a recycling center.
Yeah.
Or break them. And if you break them, you don't want to breathe the stuff that's inside of it. Dude, they're hard to get rid of. They're hazardous waste, and they're filled with mercury. And when you get rid of those bulbs, in fact, a lot of people I know, you can just go over to their house and their garage has 60 of those things in there because they just have never gotten around to get rid of them.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there waiting to break.
Yeah, in some places you might have to pay to dispose of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know about here. It seems like something like places in California or some heavily populated places would make you charge you a fee to recycle some hazardous waste.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, the T5s, don't get us wrong, man. I love them. They're on all kinds of tanks that I set up. But at this point, I think it's time to embrace they're on life support at this point in time. And so how do we use new technology today to emulate the things that we got out of it and actually not just achieve, the same level of benefit, but let's beat it. Let's get the same performance and then all the other things that we want as well. I think that needs to be the goal now, is to not just be as good, but be better. And I am certain that we can achieve that. So what's next?